Hello, one and all. I am Andrew Fantasia, and welcome back to Thumb Together. Let's talk about some movies together. Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba. So today is all about Disney and Pixar's Coco. Oh, I'm trying to gesture to it, and it's actually blocking my hand. No, I got to work on that. As you can see, I have my most colorful shirt that I could find. That's actually a little bit overexposed by this light. That's how colorful it is. So I'm just going to open it a little bit so that you don't get glare on you. But I wanted to wear this because it kind of celebrates how colorful and beautiful this movie is. So let's dive right into Coco. I'm going to talk about some spoilers in the second half of the video, and I'll warn you ahead of time. But for now, we're going in spoiler-free. I was hooked just from the prologue. The prologue of this movie sets up what this world is going to be like. Because going into Coco, other than the fact that it was about the Dia de los Muertos in Mexico, I had no idea what this movie was going to be about. I mean, even like Toy Story, the general consensus when we saw that first trailer back in, 1995 was, oh, it's about two toys who were lost and they're trying to get back home. This, I literally could tell, there was nothing. The trailers gave me nothing to go on. It was just, okay, it's the Mexican Day of the Dead, and there's some skeletons in it, and there's a boy. That's it. That's literally all I knew. So I went in super cold, and I was very pleasantly surprised by the opening of this movie. It tells you everything you need to know. It tells you what this story is going to be about, and it is a good one. Pixar, I always commend them for originality. I do a thing every year. I'll be doing it on this channel in January called the Fanny Awards, where I give out my award. It's like my Oscars. It's Oscars, but cooler, because it's got me. And one of the awards that I give, which is a category I wish the Oscars did, but they don't, is Best Original Concept. That's not, there's a very big difference between that and original screenplay. That's all well and good. But original concept, I'm talking about, like, here's the best idea for a movie that's not a sequel to anything, that's not a remake of anything, etc. It's just an original story. And every time a Pixar movie comes out, it's always nominated for me when I do Best Original Concept. And this is definitely not going to be an exception to that rule. Coco's going on that list in January because just the concept of this is so brilliant, and it's so simple too. Without going into spoilers yet, it's about a family. It's about this boy, Miguel, the main character, and his family. That's where I'll stop there because the rest is interesting. And FYI, if you don't know what the word Coco means, the title of this movie, again, that's another thing that they didn't make very clear in these trailers, is what or who or where. What is Coco? What is that? What is that? Hot chocolate? What's this movie about? I didn't know what it was. And when I went into it and I saw them talk about Coco, it's one of the best points of the movie. Coco, when you find out what Coco is, it is the drive of this entire movie, and it's, for me, the most beautiful, my favorite part of the movie. When I get to the spoilers, you'll understand what I'm talking about. The movie follows this boy, Miguel, and he is a musician, a wannabe musician. But there's some roadblocks there because music doesn't really mesh, doesn't really jive with what's going on with his family right now. And some things happen, and he ends up in the underworld, whatever it's called, the land of the dead. Miguel ends up there. He's cursed, and he needs blessing from a family member in order to get back to the world of the living. So that's the general spoiler-free plot of Coco, is he's trapped in the land of the dead because of a curse, and the only way to break the curse is for one of his family members to give him their blessing so he can go back and be alive again. Otherwise, he turns into a skeleton and he's dead forever. And that's not good because he's just a kid. We kind of need to bring up the elephant in the room, which is that there was a movie a few years ago that was very similar to this called The Book of Life. It was an animated movie. It was about the Dia de los Muertos. It was very similar in tone. It had beautiful character art styles to it. And I thought it was, because the thing is that the Book of Life suffers from what I call, well, a lot of people call it this, but it suffers from ADD. There's too much ADD in that movie. There's no such thing as a quiet moment. There's like a million little tiny side characters whose only job is to make goofy noises, like minion kind of characters, and I can't stand those goddamn things. So the Book of Life is full of those, and when a main character is not speaking, it always cuts to one of those things going like, woo, yeah, I'm making like some stupid joke, and that ruined that movie for me. Because it was a cool movie, and it was a neat concept, and it looked beautiful, and it sounded beautiful, the music was great, but there was too much of that ADD happening. And normally I like to support those smaller studios, because that was like a totally small studio that made it. It was a random guy who had not done anything big before, and I think Guillermo del Toro helped him out and gave him some money and helped produce it. And he got to make the Book of Life, and for the most part, I appreciated what he did as a creator. But damn, the ADD in that movie was just out of hand. I hate little sidekicks who just make noise and gags. That's not a good movie when that happens. Coco doesn't have that, thankfully. Coco is Pixar operating at the top of their form. So at the end of the day, yes, you're going to draw comparisons. It's very similar to Book of Life, but Coco is the classy version, if we can call it that. Another film that this is actually scarily similar to was my favorite movie of 2016, which was Kubo and the Two Strings, another animated movie. They both deal with the underworld. They both deal with the loss of family members. The only difference is Coco is about the Mexican tradition, whereas Kubo and the Two Strings was much more Eastern philosophy, Eastern traditions. But other than that, they're very similar. They even both feature a protagonist who is a young boy who plays guitar really well. Other than that, Coco delivers. It has a very brisk plot. It's one of those plots that's always on the move. There's a journey happening inside the movie. They have to get to a very fixed point. They're like, that's where we got to go, and it's about getting there. And then once you get there, things kind of turn for a loop. We end up with a very emotional, powerful, solid Pixar film, and I think that's as far as I can get without spoiling anything, because this movie has a lot of twists and turns. And actually, before I get into spoilers, the one last thing I'll say is, if you go into this movie, I can almost guarantee it, you will see most of the twists coming. They're very obvious twists, not in a bad way. They're you can tell, you're like, okay, I know where this is going, and then it goes there. But the movie was so well done and so beautiful that even though I could see stuff coming, it never, ever once ruined the experience for me. Not even a little bit. Like, I was not disappointed that I knew things were coming, because that can happen. You can watch a movie and you can say, oh, Bruce Willis is dead. Now I don't care. But with this, you can tell when things are coming. You can see the forks in the road before they get there, but you're still on board for the ride because you want to know, well, I know there's a payoff coming for this character, and I can't wait to see that. So your experience isn't dampened at all if you happen to be kind of one step ahead of the movie. So don't worry about that. If you're in the theater and you're like, uh-oh, I think I know where this is going, don't worry. You're fine. Pixar's got you. Pixar's got your back. I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to start the spoilers now because, like I said, everything in this movie is a spoiler, and I'm very glad I went in clean. So if you don't want to know anything, stop now, go watch it, then come back and see the rest of this video, and we'll go over this. But if you don't care about spoilers for Coco, here we go. We're rattling it off. The main plot of this movie revolves around a family, the Rivera family, and years ago, Imelda Rivera was married to a man who was a musician. And they had a little daughter. She was 2 years old, very young daughter. And the musician, he was very ambitious. He wanted to play for the world. He wanted to be the best musician in the world. And he kept going out and playing music and sort of leaving his family by the wayside. And one day he went out to go play for the world, and he never came back. And Imelda and the little girl, they're waiting, and the musician just did not come home. So Imelda's furious, and she decides from that point on, music is nothing but trouble. And she takes all the music in their home, every musical instrument, every record, everything, and she throws it out the window. And she dusts her hands of the whole thing, and she says, from now on, there's no music in this family. She starts a shoe company. She starts making shoes. She becomes a cobbler, and she's very successful at it. And she trains her daughter, and so on and so forth. And for generations, the Rivera family has no music at all. And that daughter, that 2-year-old daughter, is Coco. And when we catch up to, this is all the prologue, by the way, this is all just being told as a prologue. And when we catch up to the present day in the story with Miguel, who's our main protagonist, Miguel is Coco's great-grandson. Obviously, years and years have passed since that whole thing with the musician happened, and now Coco is like 100 years old, and she's in a wheelchair, and she's senile, and she can barely comprehend what's going on, and Miguel is her great-great-grandson, and he's, 8 years old or something. He's a little kid. And for the most part, like, this family has been going through their life, all these generations, without music. They're happy, they're making their shoes, and they're content. But Miguel loves music, baby. He wants to be a musician. He can play guitar. He's good at it. And he wants that to be his calling. He doesn't want to make shoes. But the family's all about the shoes. And they, especially his grandmother, she's like, no music in this house. That's our plot. And that right there was beautiful. Because like I said, I wasn't expecting anything. I didn't know what this was about. So I didn't know going into it that we would have this great little family dynamic. And God, when I found out who Coco is, and she's this 100-year-old lady who's just sitting in a wheelchair, I was like, this is beautiful. And Coco immediately became like my favorite character in this movie. She's not in it very much, but she's important. She drives the whole thing. So Miguel wants to be a musician, and it's not happening. His family's not having it. And there is a famous musician named Ernesto de la Cruz, and he's from their hometown, and he died a long time ago, and he is super, super famous for being like one of the best musicians in the world. He's like the Julio Iglesias, and Miguel idolizes him. And he really, really wants to play in a talent show that's happening on the eve of Dia de los Muertos, but his grandmother breaks his guitar because she's mad. She's like, you're not playing anything. You're making shoes, and that's final. So Miguel decides, I'm going to play in this talent show, come hell or high water. So he breaks into the mausoleum where Ernesto de la Cruz is buried, and he steals his guitar. And as soon as he does that, because he stole from the dead, he becomes cursed and is sent to the land of the dead. And like I said earlier, the only way for him to get out is to get blessing from his family. And now all of his dead family members are there in the land of the dead, including Grandma Imelda, who is the one who initially had the husband who left home and never came back and decided music is evil from now on. And she's the one he has to convince to be like, let me go back home. But she's like, I'll let you go back home. I'll give you my blessing. But my blessing comes with a stipulation, and that stipulation is no music. So he has to basically go on this adventure. His great-great-grandmother needs to send him back home, but it's always on her terms. She's not loving this music thing at all. And what we get is this really touching story where he thinks he's found his great-grandfather. His great-great-grandfather. He thinks he has found who that musician who left home long ago is. And so he's like, okay, he loved music, obviously, so I'm going to go find him and get his blessing, because he'll send me back home, and he won't have those stipulations. He'll be like, yeah, I bless you, go home, and good luck with your music. So he's trying to find this one ancestor, while his other one, Grandma Imelda, is trying to stop him. And you have this great family story. At the end of the day, Coco is about family. Coco, his great-grandmother, is the sort of tendon that ties this family together. And, how one tragic thing in the past can affect people even now into the future. By the end of it all, of course, he finds his great-grandfather. I keep calling him that. He finds his great-great-grandfather, rather. And, of course, some misunderstandings take place. We learn more about why that person left home and never came back. And I know I said spoilers, but even this is like so juicy, I don't want to spoil it for you, even though we're in the spoiler section. Just go see the movie, trust me. But at the end of it all, we get sort of what's come to define Pixar of late. And that is, we get the moment where everybody in the audience is friggin' crying like a baby. And just thinking about it now, you can tell my voice, I'm getting a little bit worked up. Again, I'm not going to spoil this, but Coco never knew what happened to her daddy. He left home and he never came back. So we're going to get some resolution about that. And when that happens, I'm telling you, when that happens, I went to a later show. I went at like 9:30 at night because I find if I go any earlier for a kid's movie, it's just going to be a bunch of kids yelling and being like, "Mom, I have to pee. Mom, who's that? Who's that guy? Why did that guy do that?" No, I can't. So I go later at night for kids' movies. And so it was mostly a theater full of adults. I think there was like one child. A lucky kid, he got to stay up late. When this scene happened, when Coco found out the truth about her daddy. Remember, this is a 100-year-old woman, so she's been waiting to hear this for a long time. Again, I'm not going to spoil what happens. It's too touching. I'll just let you see it for yourself. But you could audibly hear a theater full of grown-ups, full of adults, crying. You could fully hear just this, just in a whole theater full of that. And it's, again, like I'm thinking of it now and I'm getting choked up. It's not quite the level of like Toy Story 3. Toy Story 3, I was bawling. Like when you see like a Sailor Moon character start to cry and they're like, ah! That was me in Toy Story 3. This is close to that. This is maybe like up levels. This is up there though. This is like Pixar at its most heartbreaking. That in a nutshell is Coco. And again, I didn't spoil everything because there's so many turns in this journey. And like I said, you might see some of them coming, but that's okay. They're too good to lay out here. You don't want to see some douche tell you what happens at the end of Coco. Just go see it. I can't do it as much justice. It's the best Pixar film we've had since Inside Out, hands down. It'll be one that you will go back to and watch over and over again. This deserves a spot of honor as a Pixar classic. And one small PS to add to this is that normally, if we're used to Pixar by now, we know that you get a short film. You get a short Pixar film before the movie. It's usually about 5 minutes long, and they're usually friggin' amazing. The one that played before Cars 3 was a billion times better than Cars 3. That's something that we've always been looking forward to with Pixar. In this case, you don't get that. Instead, you get a 20-minute Frozen short about Olaf and Christmas. It's not good. It's not great. It's a musical, so there's songs in it. There's a lot of singing. I loved Frozen. It was my favorite movie of 2013. I didn't realize till I saw this short just how obnoxious Olaf is. Oh my God, Olaf. But that short just kept on going and going and going. So if you go see Coco and you're preparing your body for a Pixar short, don't. Prepare your body for 20 minutes of Olaf, because that's what you're getting. But other than that, Coco was fantastic. I highly, highly recommend it. I can't sing its praises enough. It's probably in my top 3 best films I've seen all year so far. So that's Coco. And if you like this video, go ahead and give some love to that subscribe button and some love to that like button as well. And you can see me on Rebel Scum Podcast. That's another channel I'm on where I talk about Star Wars like all the time. So there's that and there's this. If you love this, you'll love that, vice versa. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time here on Thumb Together.